The handcuffs clicked on the TV, loud and sharp, the sound of metal closing around someone's wrists. It bounced off the bare walls of the small apartment like a bad joke that would not die. Former Seattle police officer Brody Miller has been ordered to pay $4.5 million in punitive damages. Brody sat on the edge of a stained couch, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on his own mugshot in the corner of the news graphic. Same jawline, same buzz cut, same eyes, except the man on the screen looked smaller somehow. The anchor kept talking about civil rights, malicious intent, a landmark verdict. Brody only really heard one thing: $4.5 million. On the screen, the footage cut to the courtroom. A younger officer was leading him away in handcuffs, his face pale, his mouth open mid-protest. The mic barely caught it. "You can't do this. I'm a cop." The sound of the cuffs in that clip folded right into another sound in Brody's mind. The same click months earlier when his hands had closed around the wrists of an older black man on a wet Seattle street. Back then, that sound had felt like control. Now it sounded like a sentence. The scene cut. Under softer lights, in a packed auditorium at the University of Washington School of Law, Justice Samuel Holloway rested both hands on a wooden podium. His hair was silver now, his frame still solid in a dark suit that had seen more than one historic ruling. The banner behind him welcomed alumni and students. No one in the balcony knew that same face had once stared out from a booking photo on the front page of the Seattle Times. "Power is never free," Holloway said, his voice low and steady. "Not for those who wield it, and certainly not for those who live under it. When authority forgets that, the bill comes due." One day or another, his eyes swept the room. Some students took notes. Some just watched him, sensing there was something more under the words. A weight. A fatigue that did not come from age. For a heartbeat, Samuel's gaze drifted past the crowd, past the cameras, to something no one else could see. A concrete holding cell, fluorescent lights, a younger man in a cheap hoodie staring back at him with a split lip and a booking number. He blinked, and the lecture hall returned. Later, when the applause died and the handshakes were over, Samuel stepped out into the damp Seattle afternoon. The rain had eased to a mist that silvered the air. At the curb, his 1965 Jaguar E-Type waited, gleaming politely under the gray sky. He slid behind the wheel with the ease of long habit, then paused. His fingers brushed the front edge of the hood, right where the curve dipped above the headlight. The paint was flawless almost. Almost. A faint shallow scratch ran across the surface. You would miss it if you did not know to look. Samuel knew. His hand rested there a beat too long, the memory of cold metal against his hip flickering through him. That night, he whispered, more to himself than to the car, "I thought I understood the law. Turns out I only understood half the truth." He started the engine. The Jaguar purred to life, smooth and controlled, and he pulled out into the slow, gray traffic of the city that had watched all of it happen without yet knowing the whole story. If I do everything right, if I stay polite, calm, clear, is that actually enough? The question passed through Samuel Holloway's mind, the way a shadow moves across a wall, quiet, fast, leaving something colder behind. It was late afternoon in Greystone Heights, the kind of neighborhood realtors bragged about in glossy brochures. The Holloway house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac lined with Japanese maples and stone mailboxes, floor-to-ceiling windows. Art picked up on trips he barely remembered. It was the sort of address that was supposed to come with safety baked in. Inside, Samuel stood in front of his bedroom mirror, fastening a silver cufflink. His reflection stared back at him in the dark blue tuxedo. Black Supreme Court judge, State of Washington, one of the very few. 30 years of opinions on civil rights, criminal procedure, and what equal protection is supposed to mean when your skin is the color of his. Behind him, his wife Karen flipped through a stack of papers at the foot of the bed, red pen in hand. Professor of sociology at the university, she read, like other people breathed. "You're frowning," she said without looking up. "I'm always frowning before a gala," he said. "Rich people plus speeches. Occupational hazard." She smirked, then set the papers down and walked over, smoothing his lapel like she had done 1,000 times before. Their kids were grown now, scattered between coasts and grad schools. The house had grown quieter, but the rituals stayed. "You taking the Jag tonight?" she asked. "I was planning on it," he said. "The donors love that car." makes them feel like they're funding James Bond instead of appeals for wrongfully convicted men. Her hand lingered on his chest. "Sam, do me a favor." "Anything. Don't drive that thing back too late, okay? And if you see flashing lights behind you, I don't care how tired you are, just pull into a gas station somewhere with cameras. I don't trust some of those young officers out there the way you trust your courtrooms." He chuckled, tried to wave it off. "Karen, I literally sign the warrants that let them do their jobs. I think I'll survive a traffic stop." "That is exactly what worries me," she said softly. "You still think being part of the system is a shield." He didn't answer. He just reached for his wallet, slid it into his inside pocket, and grabbed the keys from the dresser. The weight of the Jaguar fob in his palm felt familiar, almost comforting. Out on the street, a police cruiser rolled slowly past the gated entrance of Greystone Heights. Inside, Officer Brody Miller had one hand on the steering wheel and the other around a paper cup of gas station coffee that had long since gone cold. "Night shift again," he muttered. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. Group chat. He flipped the screen up, eyes flicking between the road and the glowing text. "Any action out there, Miller?" Brody smirked and thumbed a reply. "Going hunting in Greystone tonight. Too many outsiders driving cars they can't afford." A couple of laughing emojis popped up almost instantly. One of the guys sent a gif of a cop slapping cuffs on a man in a suit. Brody set the phone back down and took another sip of coffee. He liked this part of town. Nice cars, nervous energy. People who called the chief when they saw something that didn't look right. People who made it real easy to say he was being proactive. That was the word he used in reports. Proactive patrol. He believed in it. Stop the wrong people in the right neighborhood and you send a message. You keep the numbers up. You get commendations. And if anyone upstairs had questions, well, as long as the words on the page were tight and the union had your back, the law would land on your side. It always had. Paper is what matters. He liked to tell rookies. Paper and the badge. You keep those clean, you're untouchable. Back in the driveway, Samuel paused with his hand on the door of the Jaguar. An old reflex flickered. Being 16 again in Atlanta pulled over 3 times in one summer for fitting a description. His father's voice in his ear. "Keep your hands where they can see them. Yes, sir. No, sir. Do not argue on the side of the road. If they're wrong, we'll fight it in court." He had turned that advice into a career. He had become the court. The system has cracks, he thought, sliding into the leather seat. But if you're inside it, if you play it right, it will catch you before you fall. He started the engine, the Jag purring like a promise, and pulled away toward downtown. The Innocence Project Gala would be full of stories about men who had not been caught by the system, men it had chewed up and spit out. He would speak about reform and safeguards and how far they had come. Hours later, under the chandeliers of a hotel ballroom, Samuel shook hands with donors and hugged exonerees in ill-fitting suits. He talked about data, about bias, about hope. Laughter rose and fell. Glasses clinked. For a few hours, it felt like the law might actually be bending the right way. Outside, the rain started. Near midnight, Samuel stepped out under the awning, tugging his coat tighter as the mist turned to a steady drizzle. The Jag waited at the curb, silver skin beaded with water. He opened the door and glanced automatically at the rearview mirror at the empty street behind him. No blue lights, no sirens, just the wet, quiet city. "If I do everything right," he told himself again as he shifted into drive. Polite, calm, clear. That has to be enough. Across town, parked under the shadow of a massive oak at the edge of Greystone Heights, Brody killed the chatter on his radio and straightened his duty belt. He checked his watch. Almost midnight. At least make one thing happen tonight that looks good on the stats, he thought. He saw headlights in the distance, low and sleek, cutting through the rain like a silver bullet. The kind of car that did not belong on wet asphalt after 11. His fingers tightened on the wheel. "Here we go," he said quietly, and pulled out of the shadows. The wipers beat a steady rhythm across the windshield as the Jaguar rolled through Greystone Heights at exactly 25 miles an hour. Signal on at every turn, full stop at every sign, the kind of driving that would put a DMV examiner to sleep. Samuel Holloway's hands rested easy on the wheel, but his eyes were busy. He watched the wet shine of the pavement, the glow from the big houses, the way the rain turned every streetlight into a halo. Old habits, he thought. You grow up black in America, you learn to treat the road like a witness stand. Every move deliberate, every move defensible. He passed the stone entrance pillars and the CCTV camera mounted above them. He was 3 minutes from his driveway. Half a block away, under that same oak tree that had watched him leave his house hours earlier, Officer Brody Miller sat up straighter in his cruiser. "There you are," he murmured. The Jaguar slid past his vantage point, its engine a low purr. Brody caught it in profile. British classic, mint condition, the kind of thing you did not see outside of car shows and hedge fund driveways. And behind the wheel, just visible through the wet glass, a dark face under a hat, broad shoulders, white shirt collar. Black man, vintage Jag, in a multi-million-dollar zip code, near midnight. His brain filled in the rest without asking permission. Stolen ride. Maybe a burglary too. Maybe worse. His hand hovered over the computer terminal. One tap and he could run the plate. The registration would pop up on the screen. Owner, address, history. He did it 100 times a week. For a moment, he almost did it now. Then he felt that itch. The one that lived under his badge and above his ego. The part of him that liked to step out of the car with the lights already flashing. The part that liked to see surprise in the rearview mirror. Trust your gut, he told himself. Computer can wait. His fingers flicked the switch. Red and blue exploded into the night, bouncing off wet pavement and million-dollar windows. In the Jaguar, Samuel saw it in the mirror. The burst of color, the sudden brightness. His chest tightened before his mind caught up. "Here we go," he said quietly. He did not speed up. He did not roll his eyes. He signaled, eased the car to the curb, put it in park. He killed the engine and watched his own hands move like he was watching someone else. Key on the dash, window down. Both hands on top of the wheel, fingers spread wide. His heart was beating too fast. His head was calm enough to notice. "You are a Supreme Court judge in your own neighborhood," he reminded himself. "You are not 16 on the side of the highway in Georgia. This time, the rules work for you." The cruiser door opened, footsteps on wet asphalt. Brody took his time walking up, one hand resting near his holster, the beam of his flashlight already slicing through the open window. "License and registration," the officer barked, skipping past even a hello. The light hit Samuel right in the eyes. "Good evening, officer," Samuel said. His voice came out steady, trained by years of commanding rooms. "May I ask why I have been stopped?" "I asked for your license and registration," the officer repeated louder. "You got hearing problems, or are you just refusing to comply?" Samuel felt the familiar spark of anger rise, then pressed it down. Survival first, pride later. "My wallet is in my inside jacket pocket," he said, keeping his hands exactly where they were. "My registration is in the glove compartment. I am going to reach for my wallet now." "Is that all right?" "Just get the ID," the officer said, dismissive. Samuel moved slowly, narrating every motion in his own head, even if he did not say it out loud. "Hand down, pocket, wallet out, back up, no sudden moves, no surprises." He handed over the license. Brody snatched it, glanced down. "Samuel James Holloway," he read. "Address on Crestview Lane. Nice street." He looked from the plastic card to the car and back to the man in front of him. Nothing about the face registered to him beyond race and age. Whatever news clip he might have seen in the past never connected. "This a nice car, Samuel," he said, dropping the mister on purpose. "Whose is it?" "It is mine," Samuel answered. "Yours, huh?" Brody said. "You know this thing is worth more than most people make in a decade, right?" "You expect me to believe you just happened to be cruising it around here at midnight." "I do not particularly care what you believe, officer," Samuel said. "I only care that you process my information so I can go home. I live 3 minutes away." "Yeah, the ID says that," Brody replied, "but IDs can be faked, especially these days." He stepped a little closer, sniffed theatrically. "And now I smell alcohol." "Step out of the car." Samuel stared at him. "I have not had a drink in 20 years, he said. "I was obeying all traffic laws. I will not step out of the vehicle without a valid reason." There it was, the line. In Brody's head, the word was not reason, it was challenge. He watched the older man's calm, the way he shaped his sentences like arguments. "Roadside lawyer," he said, letting a thin smile creep in. "I love those." He leaned toward his radio. "Dispatch, this is Miller. I got a non-compliant subject here in Greystone. Black male, mid-60s, smells like booze, refusing lawful commands. Requesting backup." Belligerent, he added, because it sounded good on paper. Samuel felt something shift. The fear in his chest did not go away. It stacked on top of anger now. "You are making a grave mistake, officer," he said. "My name is Justice Samuel Holloway. I sit on the state Supreme Court. If you check the registration properly, you will see that this car Brody slapped a hand on the roof, cutting him off." "Yeah, sure," he said. "And I am the governor. Get out of the car." The door was still locked. For a second, Samuel considered staying put, forcing the officer to decide how far he was willing to go. Then he saw the way the man's hand had slid from his belt to the grip of his gun. He unlocked the door. The moment the lock clicked, Brody yanked it open. He grabbed the lapel of Samuel's coat and pulled hard. The older man stumbled, shoes sliding on the wet street, hips slamming into the cold curve of the Jaguar. "Turn around." "Hands on the hood," Brody ordered. Samuel did as he was told. Palms flat on his own car, cheek inches from the reflection of the patrol lights. "You are using excessive force," he said, voice muffled against the metal. "I am not resisting. Spread your legs." A rough kick to his ankles. Pain shot up through his knee. He bit it back and set his feet. Brody patted him down, more punishment than procedure, then grabbed a wrist and yanked it back. The first cuff closed around the bone with a sharp snap. The second followed, the chain biting into the back of Samuel's hands. "You are under arrest for suspicion of grand theft auto driving under the influence and resisting arrest," Brody said, breath coming faster now. "Congratulations." "Grand theft auto," Samuel repeated, almost a laugh. "The registration is in the glove box under my name. Probably forged like your license," Brody shot back. A second cruiser rolled up, tires hissing on the wet asphalt. Sergeant Kowalski stepped out, tugging his jacket tighter against the rain. "What do we have, Miller?" he asked, eyes on the scene. Well-dressed older black man in cuffs. Expensive car. The set of his jaw tightened. "Caught him trying to sneak this beauty out of the neighborhood," Brody said quickly. "Erratic driving. Smelled like bourbon. Would not get out of the car. Claims he is some kind of judge." Kowalski came closer, squinting at Samuel's face in the streetlight. There was something familiar there. The beard. The eyes. A voice from a televised press conference floated up from his memory. "Miller," he said slowly. "Did you run the plates? I was securing the suspect first. He was dangerous." "Dangerous," Kowalski repeated, looking at the 62-year-old man in a tux with his hands cuffed behind his back. "Sergeant," Samuel said, lifting his head, "my wallet is in Officer Miller's pocket. My registration is in the glove compartment. I suggest you check both." Kowalski moved past Brody, opened the passenger door, popped the glove box. The beam of his flashlight found the papers. He unfolded them. Owner, Samuel J. Holloway. Vehicle, 1965 Jaguar E-Type. His throat went dry. He checked the ID Brody had shoved in his pocket. Same name, same address, same face from the wall of the precinct where they kept photos of the justices who swore in their chiefs. His stomach dropped. "Miller," he said, voice suddenly sharp. "Uncuff him. Now." "What?" Brody blinked. "Sergeant, he is drunk. He stole the car." "He uncuff him right now," Kowalski said, already reaching for the key. For a second, Samuel closed his eyes. This was the moment the script usually flipped. The apology, the half-hearted explanation, the promise that it would not happen again if everybody went home and pretended it never did. "No." The word came out of him before he opened his eyes. "Excuse me, sir," Kowalski said. "I said no," Samuel repeated. "Officer Miller has arrested me. He has stated the charges. He has placed me in restraints. You do not get to unarrest me just because you realized who I am." "Justice Holloway, we can resolve this here," Kowalski insisted. "Officer Miller made a mistake in judgment. We will straighten it out at the station." "No need to a mistake," Samuel cut in, "is forgetting to signal a lane change, profiling a man, dragging him out of his own car, and inventing a DUI charge is not a mistake. It is a violation, and I intend to treat it that way." He turned his head enough to look at Brody over his shoulder. "You wanted a criminal, Officer Miller," he said quietly. "Take me in. Book me. Fingerprint me. Put me in a cell. I want every second of tonight recorded." Brody swallowed. For the first time all night, doubt flickered across his face. "You cannot prosecute me," he muttered. "I am the police." "And I am the law," Samuel answered. "Let us both see what that means when the lights are back on." In the underground garage of the precinct, the concrete smelled like oil and bleach. Cameras watched from the corners. Brody led Samuel toward intake, the chain between the cuffs clinking with every step. At the processing desk, Captain Reynolds hurried over, eyes wide when he saw who was standing there in restraints. Justice Holloway. "I am so sorry," he started. "We can get those off you right now." "This should never have leave them on," Samuel said, pulling his hands back out of reach. "I am under arrest, Captain. Let your officer finish what he started." A tech raised the camera. The flash fired, freezing Samuel's face for the booking photo. Calm, tired, unbending. As they turned to lead him toward holding, the cuffs shifted on his wrists, metal on bone. The sound of the chain echoed against the garage walls with each small step. For years, that same sound had followed his orders in court, whenever a judge said bail is denied and the bailiff moved in. Now, for the first time in his life, the echo followed him on the other side. The holding cell was 10 feet by 10 feet and smelled like sweat, bleach, and old fear, the kind of smell that stuck in your throat. They uncuffed Samuel at the door and pushed it open. 3 men looked up. All black, all tired in different ways. One was sprawled on the bench, eyes half closed, face blank. Another paced in slow circles, hands flexing and unflexing like he was trying to wring the night out of his fingers. The third sat on the floor in the corner, back to the wall, arms wrapped around his knees. He was young, barely a man, wearing an Amazon warehouse hoodie and steel toe boots. A purple bruise bloomed high on his cheekbone. Samuel straightened his suit jacket out of habit before he stepped inside. The door clanged shut behind him, the lock sliding home with an ugly finality. The kid in the corner stared at him, eyes wide. "You serious?" he whispered. "They locking up old folks now, too." Samuel let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "Apparently," he said, they are equal opportunity tonight." He sat on the bench across from the boy. The concrete was cold through his dress pants. For a moment, silence settled over them, broken only by the distant echo of voices and the metallic pop of doors opening and closing somewhere down the corridor. "What is your name, son?" Samuel asked. The kid hesitated, then lifted his chin like he was bracing for a blow. "Leo," he said. "Leo Davis." "And what are you in for, Mr. Davis?" Leo barked a humorless laugh. "I don't know," he said. "Existing, I guess." Samuel waited. "I was walking home from the warehouse," Leo said. "I missed the bus. Took the path through the park like I always do. Cop car jumps the curb, tires up on the grass. He jumps out yelling like I just robbed a bank. Said I looked like I was scouting houses. I told him I was just going home. He slammed me into a tree. Said people in this neighborhood were tired of being targets." Samuel felt something twist in his chest. "Which officer?" he asked quietly. Leo pointed with his chin toward the hallway, the one with the buzz cut and the attitude. Miller said his name like it was a favor. Brody Miller. The name landed with a dull thud in Samuel's mind. His hip still ached from the Jaguar. His wrists still tingled where the cuffs had dug in. Samuel looked around the cell, really looked this time, not as a judge reviewing a file, skimming past names and case numbers, as a man sitting at eye level. The guy on the bench had a public defender horror story etched into the slump of his shoulders. The man pacing wore the faded uniform of a mechanic, grease stains on his sleeves, and a fresh cut over one eyebrow. Leo had shipping labels stuck to one boot and a cut lip he kept worrying with his tongue. These were the people whose stories came to him as transcripts and exhibits and motions to suppress. He had written majority opinions about their rights from a leather chair under portraits of white men. Now he could smell the stale air they breathed while they waited for those opinions to matter. The anger started low in his gut, thick and hot. It was not just anger at Miller. It was anger at the gap between the language in his rulings and the reality in this box. "You look familiar," the pacing man said suddenly, squinting at Samuel. "You on TV or something?" Samuel considered lying. Just another old man in a suit. Then he decided he was done pretending tonight. "My name is Samuel Holloway," he said. "I sit on the state Supreme Court." The cell went very still. "You serious?" Leo asked. "Yes," Samuel said. The mechanic laughed once, disbelieving. "Man, if they doing that to a Supreme Court judge," Leo said softly. What chance do the rest of us have? For a moment, Samuel had no answer. His whole career, he had believed the law could be convinced by reason, by precedent, by carefully chosen words on weathered pages. Sitting here, eye throbbing in time with his heartbeat, he felt another belief pressing in. The law was only as strong as the people who enforced it on wet streets in the middle of the night. A deputy appeared at the bars. "Holloway," he called. "You get your one phone call." Samuel rose. "Leo," he said, turning back to the boy, "do not say a word to anyone else. Do not sign anything. Do you understand?" Leo nodded, eyes big. "Do you have a lawyer?" Samuel asked. "Can't afford one," Leo said. "I will get whoever they give me." "Not tonight, you won't," Samuel said. "I will be back. When I get back, I am your lawyer." Leo stared like he was trying to decide if he was being mocked or rescued. "For real," he whispered. "For real," Samuel said. The phone in the hallway was mounted on a stained cinder-block wall. Samuel picked it up, dialed a number from memory. The voice that answered was clipped and alert despite the hour. "Rossi." "Elna," he said. "It is Samuel." There was a pause. "Justice Holloway," she said. "Why are you calling from a precinct line?" "Because I am currently occupying one of their cells," he said. "Booking number is on its way to every screen in this building." She swore under her breath. "What happened?" "Officer named Brody Miller claims I stole my own car," Samuel said. "Threw in a DUI for flavor. There is also a young man in here named Leo Davis. Warehouse worker, taken by the same officer on the way home. He needs representation before they chew him up." "I am getting in my car," Elena said. "I will be there in 20 minutes. I'll bring a bondsman. I will have you out before sunrise." "No," Samuel said. "Silence." "No," she repeated. "Do not get me out," he said. "I want to go through every step, processing, holding, arraignment. I want a record that cannot be spun as a misunderstanding between friends. I want Miller on the stand under oath at the first possible moment, and I want you ready to take Leo's case when that happens." "You want a show," Elena said slowly. "I want the truth on the record," Samuel answered, "and I want the cameras there when it happens. Let the city see what proactive policing looks like when it hits the wrong target." There was another pause. When Elena spoke again, her voice was colder, sharper. "All right," she said. "Then do not say another word to anyone. I will see you in the morning. Try to get some sleep." "I will try," Samuel said, and hung up. Sleep did not come. The night dragged, measured in the snores of the man on the bench, the restless pacing of the mechanic, the way Leo kept jolting awake every time a door slammed somewhere down the hall. By sunrise, the story had already slipped out of the building. A clerk texted a cousin. A cop vented in the wrong group chat. By 8 o'clock, a trending topic bloomed on Twitter. Black Supreme Court justice arrested in Seattle. Morning shows ran with it. Some framed it as a shocking overreach. Others, more cynical, wondered what he must have done. In church basements and barbershops on the South Side, black elders shook their heads and said the same thing. If they can do it to him, what you think they've been doing to us? By the time Samuel was led into courtroom 4B for arraignment, the benches were full. Reporters sat side by side with community activists, curious law students, off-duty cops with their badges tucked out of sight. TV cameras waited outside, red lights on. At the prosecution table, District Attorney Marcus Vance wiped his forehead and shuffled his papers. At the defense table, Samuel sat in a wrinkled tuxedo, next to Elena in a black suit and a white blouse, her eyes scanning the room like she was sizing up a battlefield. "All rise," the bailiff called. Judge William Sterling took the bench, looking older than he had the last time Samuel saw him from the other side of the room. Case number then. The clerk's voice trembled just a little. State versus Samuel Holloway. Charges grand theft auto, driving under the influence, resisting arrest. Sterling cleared his throat. "Mr. Vance, the court will hear from the state." Vance stood like a man walking across ice. "Your Honor," he began. "In light of new information, and after reviewing preliminary reports, the state moves to dismiss all charges. This appears to have been an unfortunate misunderstanding. We apologize to Justice Holloway for any inconvenience and objection," Samuel said. The word landed like a dropped book. Sterling blinked. "Justice Holloway," he said, "you are objecting to your own charges being dismissed." "I am," Samuel said, rising. "With respect, Your Honor, I will not have the official record show that this was dismissed as a courtesy or for lack of interest. If Officer Miller had probable cause to arrest me, let him state it under oath. If he did not, let that be established on the record. I request a preliminary hearing on probable cause." Sterling looked from Samuel to Vance, then down at the docket, as if hoping it might offer guidance. "The defendant has the right to such a hearing," he said slowly. "Mr. Vance." Vance looked like he might throw up. "The state will call its witness, Your Honor," he said at last. "The state calls Officer Brody Miller." The back of the courtroom shifted. Brody stood up, his dress blues too crisp for how shaky his hands were. He walked past the rows of faces, catching a glimpse of a camera lens through the doorway. He stepped into the witness box. The bailiff held out a Bible. "Raise your right hand," the bailiff said. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" Brody raised his hand. His eyes slid just for a second to the cluster of microphones outside, to the reporters leaning forward. "I do," he said. From the defense table, Samuel watched him. His face was neutral, but his gaze was sharp enough to cut. This time, he thought, you either tell the truth, or you bury yourself under your own lie. Elena Rossi rose from her chair like she had all afternoon to do this, and was almost disappointed it would not take that long. "Officer Miller," she said, walking toward the witness stand, "you testified that my client was swerving, correct?" Brody gripped the edges of the chair. "Yes." "Crossing the center line. Multiple times. So much so that you believed he was impaired." "Yes." She nodded, like she was taking him at his word. "Are you familiar with a company called Classic Telematics, officer?" "No," he said. "You should be," she replied. "They outfit vintage vehicles with modern tracking systems, GPS, lane sensors, speed logs, all of it recorded every 30 seconds and sent to a secure server." She held up a stack of papers and a glossy graph. "This, Your Honor, is the telematics data from Justice Holloway's car between 11:40 and 11:50 p.m. last night." She handed a copy to the clerk, then to the judge. "The speed is a flat line at 25. No spikes, no drops. The lane position is rock steady, not one deviation over the center line." She turned back to Brody. "So, Officer Miller, was the car lying? Or were you?" "I saw what I saw," Brody said. "Maybe the machine is broken." "Interesting," Elena said. "Let us talk about your nose then. You told this court you smelled alcohol coming from the vehicle, that he smelled like, your words, a brewery." "Yes," Brody said, grasping at confidence. "Strong odor. Are you aware that Justice Holloway has been sober for 20 years? That there are sworn statements from multiple people at the gala confirming he drank only sparkling water, and that his blood test, which your department took, came back at 0.00? He could have had a flask in the car," Brody said. "You know how people are." Elena let that hang in the air for a beat. Then she smiled without warmth. "And now the taillight," she said. "On direct, you testified you stopped him for swerving. Yet on the audio Your Honor is about to hear, you told him it was because of a broken tail light." Audio, Judge Sterling repeated. "Yes, Your Honor," Elena said. "My client did what every black parent in America begs their children to do when they see blue lights in the mirror. The moment Officer Miller pulled him over, he hit record on his phone and put it in his pocket. It captured the entire interaction until Officer Miller threw it on the hood of the car." She pressed a button on her laptop. Through the speakers, Brody's voice filled the courtroom. "A roadside lawyer. I love those. Look, pal, you want to know why I stopped you? You have a tail light out." Samuel's voice followed, calm. "The lights are functional, officer." Brody's voice again. They were flickering. "Now, license, registration. Do not make me ask again." Elena paused the audio. "Officer Miller," she said softly, "which story is the court supposed to believe? The swerving that never happened, or the tail light that did not exist?" Brody shifted in his seat. Sweat gathered at his temples. "It was late," he snapped. "Things happen fast. Maybe I mixed up what I wrote versus what I said." "So both your eyes and your memory are malfunctioning," Elena said. "How unfortunate." She stepped a little closer. "One more thing. You described Justice Holloway as belligerent and non-compliant. Would you say that now is an accurate description of the man sitting at that table?" Brody looked over at Samuel, who sat with his hands folded, watching, silent. "He was argumentative," Brody insisted. "He would not just do what I said." "Argumentative," Elena repeated. You mean he knew his rights and asked you to state probable cause? That is belligerent to you. He was making it hard, Brody said. I was concerned for my safety. So concerned, she said, that you turned your body camera off before the stop. That is in your log. So concerned that you never administered a field sobriety test. So concerned that you escalated straight to hands-on and handcuffs. She turned to Judge Sterling. Nothing further, Your Honor. Silence pressed in from all sides. Sterling looked down at his notes, at the telematics graphs, at the transcript of the audio, then back at Brody. This court finds there was no probable cause for the arrest of Justice Samuel Holloway, he said. The charges are dismissed. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Furthermore, Sterling continued, in light of Officer Miller's sworn testimony and the evidence presented, this court finds probable cause to believe that Officer Miller committed perjury. Bailiff, take the witness into custody. What? Brody blurted. You cannot arrest me. I am a cop. Not today, Sterling said. The bailiff stepped forward, almost eager. The handcuffs clicked around Brody's wrists. The sound rang in Samuel's ears. Same metal, different man. The first meeting with the union took place 3 days later in a bland conference room at headquarters. Brody sat across from Carl Vance, the union rep, and a couple of lawyers in cheap suits. We need to file a grievance, Brody said. They cannot just throw me under the bus because some judge got his feelings hurt. Carl stared at him for a long moment. Here's the thing, Miller, he said. Usually when one of our guys gets in trouble, we circle the wagons. We protect our own. We talk about split-second decisions and dangerous jobs. Yeah, Brody said. That is what I am saying. Carl slid a manila file across the table. Internal Affairs pulled your texts, he said. He flipped the folder open. Group Chat 4. Going hunting in Greystone tonight. Too many outsiders driving cars they cannot afford. Time to tax the rich. That was a joke, Brody said. So is your career, one of the lawyers muttered. We have your stop history, Carl went on. Dozens of stops of black men in that one neighborhood with almost no citations issued. We have multiple complaints we barely kept out of the papers already. And now we have you lying under oath to try to make a Supreme Court judge look like a drunk thief. He leaned back. We do not do suicide missions, Miller. The department is bleeding. The city is exposed. If we strap ourselves to you, we go down too. So what? Brody said, throat tight. You just walk away. Carl's face hardened. We defend officers, he said. We do not defend patterns like this. You are on your own. The termination hearing was quick and clinical. Chief Reynolds sat at the head of the table, flanked by the city attorney and the head of internal affairs. A recorder blinked red in the corner. Effective immediately, Reynolds said, Your employment with the Seattle Police Department is terminated. You are to surrender your badge and service weapon. You cannot fire me without due process, Brody snapped. This is your due process, the city attorney said, holding up another stack of reports. Telemetry, audio, perjury, pattern of biased stops. Not to mention the civil litigation that is coming. Keeping you on payroll makes the city a bigger target. Turn in the badge. Brody pulled the shield from his chest. For a second, it caught the light. Then he dropped it on the table. It slid, spun once, and fell to the floor with a dull clink. At home, the fallout was slower, but somehow worse. His wife Sarah sat at the kitchen table, clutching her phone like it might bite her. Her eyes were red. The landline rang, then stopped, then started again. News vans idled at the curb. Neighbors pretended to take out the trash just to stare. My boss called, Sarah said, not looking at him. They told me to take an indefinite leave. Parents at the school are complaining. They do not want the wife of that cop around their kids. He will come around, Brody said, pacing. Once this all calms down, once the union steps up, the union is on TV saying they respect the verdict, she interrupted. The pastor called. He thinks it is best if we do not come to church for a while. Too much distraction. Her voice broke on the last word. His cell buzzed. A text from his mother. What did you do, Bobby? He did not answer. On the south side of town, in a cramped apartment that still smelled like dinner, Leo Davis sat on a sagging couch while his mother wiped her hands on a dish towel and tried to process the fact that the evening news was talking about her son. They said your name, she whispered, on Channel 5, with that judge. There was a knock at the door. Leo's stomach dropped. I got it, he said. He opened the door to find Elena Rossi in the hallway, briefcase in hand, and behind her, in a dark coat. Justice Samuel Holloway, without the robe, without the suit. Just a man in his 60s carrying the weight of a city in the set of his shoulders. Mrs. Davis, Samuel said when Leo's mother appeared at the doorframe. My name is Samuel Holloway. Your son and I shared a cell the other night. Her eyes went wide. Lord have mercy, she said. You are that judge. I am, he said. And I am also Leo's attorney now, if you will have me. They sat in the living room, knees almost touching in the small space. The TV was muted, showing Samuel's own mugshot with a ticker about charges dismissed. You really going to help him, Mrs. Davis asked. You got bigger things to deal with than my boy. There is nothing bigger than your boy, Samuel said gently. What happened to him is why what happened to me matters. He turned to Leo. You ever thought about what you want to do besides busting your back in a warehouse? He asked. Leo shrugged. I do not know. I like arguing. Teachers always said I should be a lawyer till they saw my grades. Grades can change, Samuel said. Futures too. Next week, I want you to come downtown. I will show you the law school, introduce you to some people, see if the place feels like somewhere you could belong. Leo scoffed, but there was a shine in his eyes he could not hide. You really think a kid like me belongs in a place like that? He asked. Samuel smiled. Kid like you, he said, is exactly who that place was supposed to be for. On a different floor, in a different building, Elena sat in front of a blank document late that same night. The cursor blinked at the top of the page. United States District Court, Western District of Washington. She began to type. Samuel J. Holloway and Leo Davis, plaintiffs, v. Officer Brody Miller, in his individual capacity, and the City of Seattle defendants. Complaint for damages under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983. The words flowed, charged with years of case law and one very personal set of bruises. A week later, in the gray of another Seattle morning, a process server made his way through the knot of reporters on Brody's front lawn. Mr. Miller, he called. Brody opened the door, hair uncombed, t-shirt creased. Microphones leaned in toward him like metal flowers. What? He said. You have been served, the man replied, holding out a thick envelope. Brody took it, aware of every camera pointed at his face. He looked down at the caption in bold. Holloway and Davis versus Miller and City of Seattle. The paper shook in his hands. For the first time since the night under the oak tree, the thought cut through the denial, clean and cold. This might not be something he could talk his way out of. The video on Elena's laptop was grainy but clear enough. The camera sat low on the dashboard, pointed just high enough to see Samuel's hands on the wheel, the faint wash of rain on the windshield, the flare of blue and red behind him. You always this paranoid, Judge? Elena asked, hitting pause on Brody's face as it appeared in the frame. Samuel sat across from her in the conference room, jacket off, tie loosened. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. Paranoid is what my mother called it, he said. My father called it staying alive. He tapped the corner of the laptop. I installed the system 2 years ago, he went on. After we had to let a case go because there was nothing but an officer's word and a kid's bruises on the record. Elena frowned. Which case? Harris v. Seattle Police Department, Samuel said. Young black man pulled out of his car for allegedly reaching for something. No dash cam, no body cam. My dissent practically wrote itself. But it would not have changed the outcome. So you decided to wire your own car, Elena said. I decided I was not going to walk into another courtroom with nothing but my memory, Samuel replied. I told myself it was just for my peace of mind. Truth is, I knew one day somebody would decide I did not belong in my own life either. He did not say that on some level he had never really believed it would happen in his own driveway, with his own name on the registration. That was the part of him that still wanted to trust the robe on his back. Elena closed the laptop and slid a different folder toward him. The top page had the crest of internal affairs on it. You asked me to show you who Miller is, she said, not just what he did to you. Inside were pages of stop reports from Greystone Heights. Same officer, same pattern, young black men in nice cars, young black men on foot past a certain hour, rarely any tickets, almost never an arrest that stuck. He likes to frighten people more than he likes to charge them, Elena said. Half these stops did not even make it to the prosecutor. They just end with let go with a warning. There were complaint forms too. Words circled in red. Harassed for no reason. Said I did not look like I lived there. Thought I stole the car. Samuel flipped to the next section and saw screenshots, group chats between officers, memes, jokes. A photo of a black man in a luxury SUV captioned, "Whose daddy's car is this?" Brody's name under a message, "Going hunting in Greystone tonight." Too many outsiders driving cars they cannot afford. Time to tax the rich, especially the black ones. Samuel felt the now familiar wave of anger, but there was something else with it this time. A quieter, heavier thing. "I saw some of these names before," he said slowly. "Harris, Jenkins, Davis. They came to us as statistics and briefs. I wrote about them like they were examples in a law school exam." "You also wrote opinions that helped," Elena said. "Carver, the stop and frisk limits. And I wrote others that did not go as far as they should have," Samuel said. "Cases where we could have drawn brighter lines, and I chose the narrow path. To keep a police union from screaming. To keep a governor from stacking the court with someone worse than me." He looked up at her. "You ever tell yourself you are playing the long game?" he asked. "That compromising a little in one case lets you protect more people down the line." "Every day," she said. Then someone like Leo walks in with a busted face, and I wonder who I have been protecting. They sat in that truth for a moment. "There is a file from Kowalski," Elena said then, pulling out another document. He asked to speak off the record first. Sergeant Kowalski. The name came with an image. The man in the rain trying to undo the cuffs. The man who had almost sent him home that night. "He says he tried to flag Miller's behavior for years," Elena said. "Filed reports that went nowhere. Told supervisors this kid was going to blow something up. Now that the blue wall is cracking, he is willing to talk on the record. He knows what it will cost him at the station." Samuel exhaled. "So it is not just one bad actor," he said. "It is a chain of people who saw him, heard him, and let him keep going because he made the numbers look good." Elena nodded. "From where I sit," she said, "Miller is not a surprise. He is an outcome." Later that week, in a deposition room with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, Kowalski sat across from a court reporter and a camera. He twisted his wedding ring as he spoke. "I am not going to sit here and pretend I did not know what was going on," he said. "I saw who Miller pulled over. I saw who he let slide. I wrote it up, but I did not throw myself on the table to stop him either. That is on me." "Why talk now?" Elena asked. "He used to scare kids," Kowalski answered. "Now he scared a Supreme Court justice. If that is what it took to get somebody to finally listen, then maybe it is time I stop worrying about who will sit with me in the break room." When they were done, Samuel caught him in the hallway. "You did not have to do this," Samuel said. "Yeah, I did," Kowalski replied. "I have been wearing this badge long enough to know when it is dirty. I just took too long to admit it." That night, Samuel sat alone in his chambers at the court. Outside, the building was quiet, the city lights a distant glow through tall windows. On the back of his chair hung his black robe, empty arms reaching for nothing. He walked over and touched the fabric. It felt heavier than he remembered. The system was not a thing separate from him. That was the twist that hurt the most. He was not standing outside a broken machine pointing at the cracks. He was one of the gears, sometimes holding back the worst of it, sometimes grinding right along with it. The problem is not just one bad cop, he thought. It is everybody who decided to look away. And somewhere in that line, there were days I looked away too. He pictured Leo walking through the law school lobby for the first time, wide-eyed and wary. He pictured Brody in the witness box, defiant, until the evidence boxed him in. He pictured the faces of men whose appeals he had denied with carefully reasoned paragraphs that left them in cages and left him able to sleep. If justice needs someone to lose this robe so other people can feel safer in its shadow, he thought, maybe it is my turn. He let the robe slip from his fingers and dropped into the chair, the silence of the chamber loud in his ears. For the first time in a long time, Samuel Holloway did not feel like the man at the top of the system looking down. He felt like one piece in a larger reckoning that was finally, painfully, starting to see itself clearly. In federal court, the air felt heavier than it had during the criminal hearing. No one could hide behind technicalities here. The jury watched the footage of the traffic stop again, then the telemetry charts, then screen after screen of group chats and complaints. They listened to Leo describe the tree bark scraping his face. They listened to Sergeant Kowalski talk about reports that went nowhere and warnings no one wanted to read. Finally, Elena stood for closing. Officer Miller did not wear his badge as a shield for the people he swore to protect, she said, pacing in front of the jury box. He wore it as a weapon for his own prejudice. Against Leo, against Justice Holloway, against anyone who looked like they did not belong in a neighborhood his salary could not buy. The jury went out. 90 minutes later, they came back. "We find for the plaintiffs," the foreman said, voice shaking. As to Justice Holloway, $1 in compensatory damages. Samuel did not flinch. That was exactly what he had asked for. As to Leo Davis and similarly situated plaintiffs, $2 million in compensatory damages payable by the city of Seattle. Brody swallowed, eyes darting to the city attorney. That, he thought desperately, the city can handle. The foreman took a breath. As to punitive damages against defendant Miller personally, we award $4.5 million. A low gasp rippled through the room. The judge added the final cut. Based on the finding of malice and intentional violation of constitutional rights, qualified immunity does not apply in this case. Mr. Miller, these damages are yours alone. At home, it all unraveled fast. The bank froze his accounts. A foreclosure notice arrived on crisp white paper. Sarah packed a suitcase in silence while their little boy sat in front of the TV, watching cartoons like nothing had changed. "I cannot do this, Brody," she said at the doorway, tears streaking her face. "They are taking the house on Monday. My job is gone. Church will not even say our name. I will not drag our son through this with you." He grabbed for her hand. "Sarah, please." The appeal is not bringing back who you were," she said. "I do not even know that man anymore." She'd left the house key on the counter. At the Blue Line, the bartender blocked his way. "Not tonight, kid," Max said. "Or any other night. You made the rest of us look dirty. I call the cops. You really want that headline." Old partners crossed the street to avoid him. The only work he could find was a graveyard shift guarding a warehouse gate, then a register at a gas station off the freeway. The jobs he used to assume belonged to people who had made bad choices. Meanwhile, Samuel paid another kind of price. The hate mail started small, a few letters calling him a traitor. Then it came in stacks, envelopes with no return address, messages on social media from faceless accounts. Pro-police groups on talk radio called him an activist in a robe, said he had put a target on every cop's back. The governor stopped returning his calls. Legislators who used to praise his opinions started talking about term limits and new appointments. One night, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold, Samuel stared at a blank resignation letter on his laptop. Karen sat across from him, grading papers. "You do not have to do this," she said quietly. He looked up. "There are fights I still believe in," he said. "But I can feel the ground shifting under this court. I can stay and spend the next 5 years blocking fire from the inside, or I can step aside and let someone younger, less bruised, step in." She reached over, covered his hand with hers. "You won, Sam," she said. "You held that man accountable. You pulled a thread out of something ugly." He nodded. "And I lost something too," he said. "There are battles you win, but you do not have enough people left beside you to keep fighting the next one." The next morning, he signed the retirement letter in his chambers. His pen scratched softly in the quiet room. He set the robe on the back of the chair one last time, palm resting on the fabric. Outside, Seattle was doing what it did best. The rain came down in a steady curtain as he walked alone down the marble steps of the Supreme Court building. Reporters shouted questions from under umbrellas. He gave them a small, polite wave and kept moving. On his face, there was a hint of relief. In his shoulders, a weight finally shifting. Somewhere under all of that, in a place no camera could see, there was an empty space that would not fill in again. 1 year later, they were calling it the Miller Ordinance. Every patrol car in Seattle rolled out with body cameras that had to switch on the moment the engine turned over. Footage uploaded straight to the cloud. A civilian review board with black residents from neighborhoods like Leo's sat in on use of force cases. On local news, commentators still pointed back to Holloway v. Miller as the night the city finally flinched at what it saw in the mirror. In a lecture hall at the law school, Leo Davis sat near the front, in a blazer that did not quite fit yet. Second year now, working part-time at Elena Rossi's firm, taking pro bono intakes from people who looked like his uncles. Beside him, students whispered his story under their breath. The kid who went from holding cell to law school. On stage, Professor Samuel Holloway rested his hands on the podium the way he used to on the bench. Consequences do not show up to punish us, he told the room. They show up to show us who we have become. After the ceremony, he drove south toward Tacoma, rain misting the highway. He was low on gas and tired, so he pulled into a quiet station off the exit. The pumps were bright under the canopy, the rest of the lot swallowed by dark. Inside the booth, a man in a faded polo and name tag looked up, stubble on his jaw, lines deeper around the eyes. Brody Miller froze when he recognized the face behind the glass. "Sir," he stammered. Samuel slid a few bills across the counter, then met his eyes. "Now you know what it feels like," he said, "to stand under someone else's lights and hope they decide to see you as human." Brody's mouth opened, then closed. No report to write, no badge to hide behind, nothing to say. Later that week, back in the classroom, Samuel ended his final lecture of the semester with one more warning. "Never think you are immune to the pull of power," he said. "The day you start using the law to lean on someone weaker just because you can, that is the day you move to the wrong side of history." His words hung there, heavy and quiet. With men like Brody Miller, equality will always feel like oppression. But for people like Leo, justice is not revenge. It is finally being able to drive home at night without rehearsing how to survive the lights in your rearview mirror. If this story of hard karma and courtroom justice hit something in you, do me a favor, tap that like button so more people can find it. Tell me in the comments whether you think Brody paid enough, or if the system still let him off easy. Type justice in the comments if you believe what happened to Samuel and Leo should never be normal in any country. And if you want more stories that dig into power, consequence, and what real justice costs, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next one.